Welcome to episode 3 of Magento Katas, this time the Around Interceptor Kata. Please leave me a comment down here under the video or ping me on Twitter if you like the video or if you have any kind of feedback actually. I would really appreciate it. It was a lot of fun making the video, so I hope you find it useful and enjoy it. Thank you for watching. Welcome to episode 3 of Magento Kata. This is the Around Interceptor Kata. So if you've been following along with the Kata series, in this episode we're finally going to write the actual plugin. The scenario for this kata is that we want to intercept calls to the save method of the customer repository interface. Let's have a look at that method. The arguments it receives are the customer to be saved and an optional password hash. The goal is every time a new customer is being saved, we want to call a method on a class representing an external API. So we tell the external system, hey, a new customer just registered. Just a quick note before we start, if you still have the code from the previous kata lying around, it's probably a good idea to rename the integration test to something else. Otherwise, PHP Storm can sometimes get a little confused about two classes with the same name. Alright, let's get started. To start, let's create a unit plugin directory within test. And we'll name our test class Customer Repository Plugin Test. As always, extend PHP unit framework test case. I'll start with the test nothing test to be sure everything is set up okay. And just to keep things interesting, I'll create a test nothing test this time that passes instead of fails. And it passes, very good. Now, what is our first real test? Let's take a small step and start with testing our plugin class can be instantiated. Test it can be instantiated. And since this is a temporary test, let's just call new here. Run the test, and it fails because it can't find the class. Well, makes perfect sense. I wouldn't be able to find it yet either. So let's go ahead and create it. First, a plugin directory. Alright. Create that class here, please. And there it is. Get rid of that crap. All green. Good. Now this, of course, isn't a real test. It's just a step along the way. But it's green, so it's time to refactor. Let's assign this to a property. I'll call it plugin. And it needs a type hint. Customer repository plugin. And it should be assigned in a setup method. And yeah, I think it's good. So what next? Next, let's check the actual aroundSave method can be called. The aroundSave method can be called aroundSave. It doesn't exist yet, and of course it will take some arguments. Since it is an around plugin, the first argument will be the customer repository subject, the second will be the proceed method, and after that the regular arguments to the save methods follow, so the customer being saved and the password hash. First the subject customer repository. The second argument is the proceed callable, and the customer, and the password hash. So what will we pass in as these values? For the subject, we'll just use a mock. This mock customer repository is this get mock customer repository interface. Import that. And now we'll use that as our subject. This mock customer repository. Okay, I forgot to assign this as a field. And a type hint for autocompletion. Here we go. So that's our subject. What about proceed? We could use another mock or a closure with a variable reference, but actually just to mix things up, I think this time we'll use our test class instance. We are going to make our test class callable by implementing invoke. And the proceed callable takes the arguments to the original method. First the customer interface instance. Let's just check we got the right import. Oh no, we didn't get the right import. So this actually has to be this one. And as the second argument, the password hash. So now our test instance is callable and we can pass that in as the proceed method. Right, so what about the customer? That's a customer interface instance, and we'll also use a mock for that. Now this is the customer that is being saved. This customer to be saved. Get mock customer interface class. Very good. Oh, forgot to add it as a field again. I'll fix that. Okay. Customer to be saved. And then finally the password hash. That's just null. And we can run the test. And of course it fails because the aroundSave method doesn't exist. So let's add that. And yay, we're green. Good, time to refactor. So first I would like to type these arguments here. And the first argument is a CustomerRepository interface instance. The next one has to be callable. Third, the customer interface. This one. And the password hash is optional. Still green? Still green. Good. So much for the plugin. What about the test? Any refactoring here? Not so much. Oh yeah, actually, I would like to extract this into its own method. Method name call_around_plugin. We'll be doing that quite a bit. Maybe call_around_save plugin is better. Okay, and let's move that above setup. Alright. Now, this still isn't a real test here. What could be a real test? I think a good place to start is to ensure our plugin always calls the proceed method and returns its return value. And the proceed method will always return the saved customer, as we saw by looking at the method signature and the PHP doc type hint of the customer repository interface method. Return customer interface, that's the saved customer. So I want to do this. This mock saved customer is this get mock customer interface class. Add that as a property. It's both a customer interface and a mock object. And that's what we'll return here. Good. And now we can add the assertion to our test. Result is this call_around_plugin, and this assert same, this mock saved customer, and result. And of course, now this fails. Well, first of all, because in our call_around_save plugin method we don't return anything, but the test still fails. Because, well, in aroundSave we don't do anything. To make it pass, we'll just call our proceed method. And the proceed method actually refers to our invoke method, which receives the customer and the password hash. So let's pass the customer and the password hash, and we're back to green. Green means refactoring time. Let's just inline this. Okay, refactoring done. What's the next test? Let's move on to something more interesting. For example, let's ensure the external API is called for new customers. New test. Test it notifies the external API for new customers. Right. What's a new customer? It's when this mock customer to be saved, the method getID will return null. Right, that's a new customer. Now, the external API. Oh, we haven't got that yet. Time to create a mock for it. And we'll once again use a mock for a non-existent class. This mock external API, customer API, this get mock external customer API class. And since it's a non-existent class, we have to tell PHP-unit which methods it will have. Register new customer. And I'm just copying the method name and the class name because I'm lazy. So now when I add a type hint, I can just paste the class name. Right, and we're gonna make this external API a dependency for our plugin. We need to inject that into the constructor. Now in the test, we can say, given it's a new customer, then the mock external API expects this once, that the method register new customer will be called. All right, call aroundSave plugin, run the test, and of course it fails, because it expected the method to be called one time, actually called 0 times. Now, to make this pass, we'll have to receive the external customer API in the constructor, assign it as a property, and now we can call the register new customer method, and that makes our test pass. Of course, this line of code isn't done yet. We won't be leaving it the way it is, but at the moment it actually makes sense because it's exactly what our test expects. Right. Now, let's add a new test that ensures the external API is not called for existing customers. Test it does not notify the external API for existing customers. And what is an existing customer? A customer with an ID. So if a customer has an ID, we expect the API method never to be called. And when we run the test, it fails. Of course it does, since we always call register new customer. So to make this pass, we'll wrap this into an if statement. Customer getID. So if getID is null, then we'll call register. Good, and we're passing. Now, what's the next step? I think the next step is to ensure we're passing an argument to register new customer. So what will we use as an argument? Let's just use the ID of the new customer. We'll just pass along the ID, we won't bother with any of the other customer data. In this fake scenario, we'll just assume the external system will fetch the customer data it needs once we give it the new customer ID. So let's assume mock saved customer method getID will return 123, which is just a fake ID. So now register new customer expects to be called with 123. Since we're using it twice, let's extract that into a variable customer ID. Now this little addition will make our test fail again. Right? Very good. The parameter count is too low, which is true. So what can we do to make our test pass? Now what I want to do is the following. First, let's extract this into a variable is customer new, and extract this into a variable saved customer, because that's what the proceed method returns. And let's add a type hint here, because PHP Storm can't possibly know what type saved customer is. And now we can pass the result of customer getID to the register new customer method. And the test passes again. Excellent. Is there anything to refactor? Well, actually, I'd like to inline these here. I think it still passes. Yep. Yeah, I think we're good. So, that completes the kata. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. As always, once you're done, please go ahead and delete all the code, so we can do the kata again and repeat it as often as we want to until we don't have to think about the steps during TDD anymore. In the next episode, we're going to create a full integration test for our plugin, not just the config, but one that actually executes the code. And yeah, hope to see you again. If you liked it, please leave me a thumbs up. And if you want to, feel free to ping me on Twitter. Goodbye until next time.